Hello and welcome to Shannon Gardens. Thank you guys so much for joining me. So in this week's video, there are actually a couple of things that I wanted to do. First, I wanted to share with you guys my October checklist for the garden. So these are some of the tasks that I have listed that I'd like to get to in October that are appropriate for October in my zone 7B, 8A in Georgia. Now this may vary from zone to zone. It may depend or vary slightly on your first frost day and what that is for your zone, but it'll give a general overview of some of the things that you may want to be looking at in your garden as well. And if you guys find this helpful, please let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd like me to incorporate in these videos, maybe toward the beginning of each month's video for that month. So in the second part of the video, I wanted to take one of those tasks that I do mention and actually check that one off my list in this video as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So fall is one of the busiest seasons, and usually you just think of spring as being that busy season, but fall definitely is as well. And I think October in particular is busy in my garden. So I want to share with you guys some of the tasks that I will be performing in the garden in October. And first on the list is planting my spring blooming bulbs. So that's going to be your daffodils and your tulips, and getting those planted in the ground or in containers, which in my case, I tend to do more container gardening with my bulbs and the lasagna method, which I'll include in an upcoming video. But that is one of the tasks on my list. And then next is transplanting trees or shrubs, or even adding trees and shrubs or perennials to the garden. So if there are any trees, shrubs, and perennials that I want to add to my landscape, I'll be doing that hopefully in the month of October. Now in my state and zone, I can actually really extend that into November and even December, but it's something that I'm very much thinking about in October and trying to accomplish in October. But I do allow myself some grace. Just because I don't finish something by a certain time doesn't mean it can't be done. So now I'm also going to be dividing some of my perennials, particularly my daylilies. I know that those need to be divided. I'm going to go ahead and take care of that this month. And then I'll also be adding pansies, violas, and snapdragons to my containers or in the ground, mostly container gardening again. For those annuals, I'll do some in the ground though, and that will actually be probably later in the month for me when I'll really take care of that. But that is on the list as well. Now I'll also be bringing frost tender perennials inside, and I really only have one of those I bring inside. And that is because honestly, I don't really have the room for a lot of plants indoors or to provide them with the sun that they need. I have one space, which I will be showing you guys in some videos later down the road, but I do have one space where I tend to put all of my plants inside that I can bring in, or my orchids, and kind of keep them all in the same space. Maybe one day I'll have a greenhouse, but for right now, I don't bring a lot in just because of a lack of space. But there is one that I am hoping to do a video on here in the next few weeks to share with you guys. So keep a lookout for that. And then the last thing that I'll touch on in this video anyway, as far as my October task, is planting my fall vegetables. And that's what I'm going to be doing in today's video. So I've got to get those planted. I'll be doing a herb refresh as well as planting my fall vegetables. Now, I don't know about you guys and if you've had any difficulty with this, but I have certainly had some difficulty in finding the vegetables that I want to plant. But I did just locate some collards, which are very important to me to plant in the fall. I also got some lettuces, and then again doing that herb refresh that I mentioned, and I'm going to tuck in some violas in the planting as well. So I've hit on some of the main tasks, not everything, but I've hit on some of those main tasks that I'm going to be focused on this month and hope to achieve this month. We'll see how the month goes. That I just wanted to share that with you guys in case that's something that you want to take a look at in your garden as well for your zone. Okay, so I did want to share some of the plants that I'm going to be planting today. I'm so excited about this. First, I have my red leaf romaine lettuce, and I have green romaine lettuce as well that I'll be planting. And then I've got my collards, which I love so much. And I have to show you guys this. They look a bit spindly. I had to be super careful when I got these to make sure not to break them, but I was able to find them. This was the first time I had found them, so I made sure to grab them up before they disappeared. And the collards, like I mentioned, generally last into winter for me, so I love having my collards, and it's really a mainstay in my fall vegetable garden. Now I also have cilantro here. Now, I've actually found for me that cilantro works much better in the fall than in the spring. In the spring, we just get so hot so quickly, and the cilantro, no matter where I've placed it in my garden, it just doesn't seem to do well, but it really lasts in the fall. So I've got a couple of cilantro plants, which I'm very excited about. I've also got my parsley, and then my oregano. And then I have my thyme with this pretty variegation, which, let's be honest, that's really the big reason why I bought it. I like thyme as well, but I really liked it for the variegation. Then I've got my sage, which is also variegated. And then I picked up a lavender plant. Now I have lavender actually planted behind me here. I don't know if you can see it behind me in the white pot, but I decided to go ahead and plant one more just in case something happens with this one lavender. I know that they can be a bit finicky, so I decided to go ahead and plant another one, kind of a backup to it. So if this one dies, then I'm going to move this one, this new one, over to this planter. Then I got a couple of viola plants, not too many, just a couple to tuck in here just to make everything look pretty. So I think I'll go ahead and get started in planting these. Now I did want to mention that I am planting in elevated planters, and I already have fresh soil in there specifically for elevated planters. I'll put a picture of the soil that I'm using here just so you guys can get an idea, but it is specific to elevated planter gardening, and it already has the peat moss and everything incorporated into it. I didn't stick with a brand necessarily. It was just what was on sale, and I knew it was appropriate for my container. So I've got that all added in, and I'll just need to pop these plants in and then get them watered and then go from there. And one other thing I did want to mention is that with my elevated planters, I actually do have covers for those. Now I've had the covers for years and I never really used them until last year. I don't know why, but I just never took them out until last year. But I did find them quite helpful in covering the plants and making everything last a bit longer because they were protected in those colder days or maybe the really windy days. I was able to cover those. So I don't know why I didn't use them before, but I did want to also mention to you guys that the covers did come in quite handy as it got colder through the winter. All right, so I believe that's it. I'll get these planted and take you guys along with me to share that. It should be relatively easy, and I'm so excited to get this task checked off the list. Okay, you guys, so I've kind of laid out a general idea of how I want everything to look. The collards take up the most room. They kind of grow out more, whereas the romaine lettuce can be placed closer together. And I just looked at the tags on the back of each one to see about how much room they need. I'm putting the herbs where I can easily get to them and where they are not going to be completely covered up by the collards and the lettuces that I'm planting. So I'll just get these in, and as I do that, I'll make adjustments as needed. I'm being super careful with the collards because they have just these little roots. They're hanging on by a thread. So I want to make sure to be careful with those and so that I don't break them, which is something that I tend to do often, if I'm being completely honest. So I'm going to be very careful with those. Now, the nice thing to me about gardening in the elevated containers or just in containers in general is this soil. It is so much easier to plant. I am in Georgia and we have that Georgia red clay that is just quite cumbersome and difficult to move around. So if you're trying to amend the soil of the Georgia red clay, if it's an area that I haven't worked before, it is very difficult sometimes to do. So it's always a joy to do the raised bed gardening like I'm doing here. It's just so much easier and takes no time whatsoever. So I'll just get these in, I'll make some adjustments as needed, and then I'll show you guys the end result. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention as far as my October task that I begin, and that is fall cleanup. And that really can be quite intensive when you get started on that. Now, I begin mine in October, but I actually don't do a lot of it until November and then maybe even the beginning of December because I have a lot of plants that haven't died back yet. So I just find that I wait a little bit longer in the season to really do that. Otherwise, I'm doing the same thing over and over again. But it is something that I did want to mention, that you can start your fall cleanup, and it may actually be an earlier time frame for you to do your fall cleanup in your zone. All right, you guys, I have finished. Now, I know that the plants look quite small right now and a little haphazard when you first put them in, but it's surprising how quickly these plants will fill in and everything will look so nice and full here in probably about a month or so. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm so excited to get those vegetables planted and get started on my fall planting. It's such a big season. I know everybody thinks that spring is being the big season, but I always think of spring and fall as being equally busy, just in kind of different ways. Anyway, thank you guys so much again. And please, as I mentioned before, if you guys do find the to-do list helpful and you would like to see more of that in the upcoming months, please let me know in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. So thank you guys so much again. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so that you can be notified each time I upload a new video. All right, you guys, until next time, happy gardening and goodbye.